Hello, everyone. Welcome to Anime Dreams. Today, we're diving into another exciting chapter of our fanfiction series. What if Naruko was born in Uchiha? Part 7. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This channel is dedicated to entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in my videos. Full credit goes to the original creators and copyright holders. Now, without further ado, let's jump right in. Naruko's awakening. Naruko blinked as she surveyed her surroundings. She found herself inside a cave within the ravine she had marked on her map. However, she had no recollection of how she arrived there. The last thing she remembered was feeling utterly drained from the battle and receiving chakra from the Kyuubi. I had to take control after you lost consciousness, the Kyuubi informed her. Oh. I see. How long was I unconscious? 2 days. Are you not concerned that I took control? No. If you had any ill intent, I wouldn't be standing here. Regardless. Thank you. Humph. You certainly put on an entertaining display. Naruko nodded before glancing around once more. Though her vision was impaired, she could still make out her surroundings. She placed a hand over her eyes and shook her head. You've overused them. This is the consequence. The more you strain them, the worse your vision will become until it fades completely. Why are you telling me this now? I am merely stating the inevitable. This is not advice, human. Perhaps. What did you wish to discuss? Do you truly mean what you said? About peace? The Kyuubi gave a slight nod. Yes. Without a doubt. I am determined to find a path to peace. I neither trust nor favor you just yet. However, I will support your efforts. When you find yourself in dire circumstances, I will grant you access to my power. Over time, as my trust in you grows, I will allow you greater control. But mark my words, should I deem you unworthy, you will be stripped of my power entirely. I understand. Achieving peace will take time. It won't happen overnight, but I promise, I will find a way. Naruko summoned a crow and attached a small message to it, hoping her squadmates were safe. She could only trust that they had not encountered significant trouble while making their way back to the village. Rising to her feet, she began to prepare for the journey ahead. A quick self-assessment revealed that her injuries had healed, though her supplies were running low. She was nearly out of kunai but still had an ample supply of shuriken. However, her armor had sustained severe damage, particularly around the forearm guards. Recognizing that the compromised pieces were now a liability, she removed them, setting the chest and arm plates ablaze to prevent their retrieval by adversaries. Now dressed in her sleeveless black compression shirt and protective sleeves, she felt more comfortable in the heat, though at the cost of some defensive coverage. With her vision reduced to approximately 60%, she knew that any miscalculation could leave her vulnerable. Stealth and caution would be paramount in completing her reconnaissance mission. Consulting her map, she identified her next objective and set off. Hokage's office. A crow soared through the open window, capturing the attention of both Hiruzen and Commander Wolf as it landed on the desk. For 2 days, they had awaited word from Naruko. They understood that if she had survived, she would have required at least a day to recover. However, as the second day passed without news, concern grew, particularly for Hiruzen. While Wolf remained composed, confident in Naruko's resilience, Hiruzen wrestled with lingering guilt. The weight of past decisions made this waiting period all the more difficult. Yet, the arrival of the crow brought immediate relief. They now knew that Naruko was alive. The note read, I have successfully defeated the 100 Iwa shinobi. Awoke at 0900 this morning. Proceeding with reconnaissance. Will report back in 8 days. Hiruzen passed the message to Wolf, who nodded in acknowledgement. He had faith in Naruko's abilities, and her decision to proceed independently only solidified his respect for her. It was clear that recruiting her had been a wise choice. I wonder how much she relied on her eyes during the battle. Perhaps the time for the transplant is approaching, Wolf mused. Hiruzen met his gaze, both arriving at the same conclusion. They were aware of Naruko's training with the eyes, and a battle of this magnitude would have undoubtedly forced her to push their limits. Shall we inform her squad? That decision is yours, Sandaime-sama. Summon them. They have the right to know that their teammate has survived and continues her mission. However, they will not be permitted to re-enter Earth country. Their mission has officially concluded. Understood, Sandaime-sama. With that, preparations were set in motion. Naruko's path remained arduous, but she had already proven herself capable. Now, all that remained was to see how far her determination would take her. A few minutes later, Squad Rho gathered, with the exception of Naruko. Yugao, Hinto, and Zoro bore solemn expressions, while Tenzo appeared disappointed. He had been forewarned by Naruko yet had chosen to dismiss the advice, an oversight that led to him being rendered unconscious and affected early in the mission. I'm sure you're all wondering why you've been called here, Wolf began. Anbu operative Fox was left behind enemy lines and faced a formidable group of 100 adversaries. Did she make it? Yugao asked quietly, hesitant to hear anything otherwise. 30 minutes ago, we received word from her messenger Crow that she regained consciousness at 0900 this morning after the battle. She has decided to continue with the mission. Did she share her location? Maybe Hinto started, only to be interrupted. You will not be returning. There will be no reinforcements. Naruko was aware of this and still chose to send you back while she proceeded with the mission alone. Commander, she's only 11. Tenzo protested. Yes, and had you heeded her warning and adjusted your position accordingly, you wouldn't have been incapacitated. She wouldn't have been forced to take command, leading to the situation at hand. You're all dismissed. Wolf's frustration was evident. Tenzo should have exercised greater caution. That was a bit severe, Hiruzen noted after the squad had left. He could have prevented the need for Naruko to act as a decoy. His stubbornness put her in that position, Wolf replied. Naruko's house. Sasuke sat in the dojo, meditating. Naruko had been away for a few days and was expected to return in 3 more. A small smile formed as she thought about the different foods Naruko might have tried along the border villages. Standing up, she reached for her katana, eager to experiment with lightning chakra. Naruko had taught her the Uchiha style, Dance of the Sun Halo, which harnessed fire chakra, but she was curious to see if she could adapt it with lightning. It could be a strategic advantage, one that might give her an edge over Naruko in a match. At present, neither of them had a solid counter to lightning style. Her main struggle lay in control. Unlike fire, which was steady and fluid, lightning was erratic and unpredictable, flowing wherever it pleased. At this moment, she couldn't maintain precise control over the lightning surrounding her blade. Perhaps, with time and practice, she could refine it. She was so engrossed in her training that she failed to notice Kakashi's arrival. As she executed a spinning slash, her katana stopped mere inches away from him. Oh. I'm so sorry. I didn't. It's all right, Kakashi reassured her. How's the technique coming along? It's slow, sensei. Controlling the lightning on the blade is harder than I thought. Instead of focusing on shaping the lightning, try concentrating solely on chakra manipulation. What do you mean? You're attempting to change the form, creating visible lightning bolts. Controlling them over a large surface area like a sword is extremely difficult. It might work on a kunai since it's smaller, but for a blade, it's too much to manage. Instead, focus on simply coating the sword in lightning chakra, similar to how you maintain chakra while tree walking. So, instead of forming bolts, I should just envelop the blade in chakra and then adjust its nature? Exactly. You'll know it's working when it emits a humming sound and turns blue. Thanks. Sasuke immediately applied the advice, and the results were noticeably better. It wasn't exactly as she had envisioned, but she realized it was unrealistic to expect lightning to behave the same way as fire. She continued refining the technique, with Kakashi offering occasional feedback. Their session was interrupted when Yugao arrived, accompanied by a blue-haired individual. Yugao? Weren't you supposed to be on a mission for a few more days? Kakashi asked, puzzled by their early return. More concerning, however, was the absence of Naruko. Sasuke immediately sensed the unease in Kakashi's tone, causing her own nerves to spike. What could have happened? It was just a routine mission to the border villages, surely nothing serious had occurred? Naruko is safe. We received a message from her this morning, Hinto reassured them. Sasuke turned to him. And you are? My apologies, he said with a small nod. My name is Hinto. Naruko is a close friend of mine. What happened? If we received a message and you're here, but she's not. Sasuke's voice carried a mix of worry and frustration, despite her efforts to remain composed. If they had received a message, at the very least, it meant Naruko was alive. Something went wrong during our mission. She tried to warn the captain that something felt off, that we needed to reposition or retreat. The captain refused. We were ambushed. The captain was injured and lost consciousness due to poison. Naruko immediately took charge, assessed the situation, and devised a strategy within seconds. We retreated to a crater 50 miles from the border to make a stand and buy Yugao time to get the captain to safety. But then, things escalated, 100 enemy shinobi appeared. Naruko realized it was a trap. She ordered Zoro and me to retreat and assist Yugao. She stayed behind to hold them off. What? No. Tell me you're lying. Sasuke's eyes welled with tears, disbelief evident in her expression. She did it because it was the only way, Kakashi interjected, analyzing the situation based on the information given. With her Susanoo and Mangekyo Sharingan, she could sustain nearly 2.5 minutes of near invulnerability. Combined with her skills, she was the only one who could buy enough time for the rest of you to escape. She didn't hesitate for a second. The moment the captain fell, she understood the overwhelming odds of a 1 versus 100 battle. Yet she still chose to fight. Because of her, we made it back with the critical intelligence we needed. Now that we've received a message confirming her survival, she said she will proceed with the mission. Yugao completed Hinto's explanation. Then go back. Help her. You can't just leave her alone. Sasuke was overcome with frustration and sorrow, furious that Naruko was still out there, facing danger on her own. We can't. When we accepted this mission, we knew there would be no reinforcements. The moment she sent us back, it marked the end of our role in the mission. She understood this. Yugao's voice was laced with sadness. She didn't like the decision either. Leaving Naruko behind had been one of the hardest things she had ever done. Sasuke's emotions boiled over, and she moved to lash out, but Kakashi quickly restrained her. She glared at him before turning back to Yugao. Where were you stationed, then? This clearly wasn't just some border village operation. Sorry. I can't disclose that, Hinto responded, stepping in for Yugao. He understood Sasuke's pain. Naruko had spoken about her before, especially when they spent time together outside of missions. He knew how deep their bond ran, and he, too, cared deeply for Naruko. Sasuke felt a surge of emotions, anger, worry, and sadness all at once. The person who had always stood by her side, the one who watched over her, the one she now realized she truly cared for, was alone and in danger. How many more close calls would there be before she returned? To everyone's astonishment, Sasuke's Sharingan awakened, revealing a single tomoe in each eye. Her crimson gaze burned with determination as she looked at them. If she doesn't come back. Her voice wavered, but her intent was clear. Without another word, she stormed off toward Naruko's room, unaware of her newly awakened power. As she left, Kakashi turned to Yugao. You said there were 100 enemies? Yes. And she defeated them all before managing to reach safety. She then collapsed from exhaustion and remained unconscious for 2 days. She'll need at least 8 more days to make up for the lost time. Yugao still found it hard to believe. Kakashi was stunned. If she can accomplish something like that at 11 years old, what will she be capable of in another 10 years? His mind raced at the possibilities. No child had ever achieved such a feat in a direct battle. Even Itachi's actions had relied on the element of surprise. The others nodded in agreement. Naruko's potential seemed limitless. With the right guidance and a few more advanced techniques, she could reach cage-level strength before long. You should teach her the Shadow Clone Jutsu, Yugao suggested. She already knows Crow and Earth clones. With her chakra reserves, mastering Shadow clones would significantly accelerate her growth. Kakashi nodded in agreement. Teaching her that technique would also help her refine the Chidori, and eventually, the Reikiri. Meanwhile, Sasuke sat in Naruko's room, her eyes scanning the photographs on the dresser. One, in particular, caught her attention. It was of the two of them together. A small, sad smile formed on her lips as she picked it up. "You'd better come back," she whispered, holding the photo close as she curled up on Naruko's bed, her thoughts filled with concern for the girl who meant so much to her. Earth Country. Naruko carefully trailed a patrol unit, studying their patterns and rotations. Understanding their route meant uncovering the movements of all other patrols, as their routines were largely uniform. These border patrols primarily monitored incoming travelers and relayed information to the village. Unlike the unpredictable security measures around shinobi villages, which were designed to prevent infiltration, these patrols operated with a structured approach. Given enough time and observation, any defense had a vulnerability. Just like with jutsu, absolute perfection did not exist. Every technique had a flaw, however small, that could be leveraged. Naruko had spent years refining her skills in these situations. As an Onbu operative, she was trained in reconnaissance and espionage. Her vision, however, remained a significant challenge. Despite its limitations, her Sharingan still provided a precise photographic memory, allowing her to map out the terrain later. Her deteriorating eyesight was no longer something she could ignore. After the last battle, the decline had become undeniable. Continued use of the Sharingan was taking a toll, and she needed to find a solution, quickly. Shisui was no longer available for guidance, nor was Itachi. Kakashi rarely utilized his Sharingan, at least not in a way she had seen, so it was uncertain if he had encountered the same issue. The question remained, was there even a way to halt or reverse the damage? Adding to her concerns was the possibility of leaked intelligence. As far as she knew, only her squad, Lord Hiruzen, and Commander Wolf were aware of the full scope of the mission. Her team members were beyond suspicion, and the remaining two were unquestionably loyal. No external spy should have had access to such sensitive information. If the Uchiha clan were still around, there might have been a possibility of uncovering a genjutsu-based solution. However, that path had been erased. Itachi had seen to it, leaving only her and Sasuke as the last remnants. The reasons behind Itachi's actions remained elusive, but that mystery would have to wait. For now, she had a mission to complete. The patrol was slowly making its way back to Iwagakure, and she had a decision to make. Should she follow them into the village or expand her reconnaissance further? 9 days later. Naruko finally returned to the Hidden Leaf village. Checking in at the gates, she proceeded directly to the Hokage's office. She had sent a messenger crow in advance to notify them of her arrival. It felt good to be back, even though her vision had worsened, now down to just 40% clarity, with constant double images plaguing her sight. The mission had been grueling, and all she wanted now was a moment of respite, perhaps to share a quiet evening with Hinto. Sasuke was another matter entirely. By now, Sasuke was likely aware of what had happened and was undoubtedly frustrated, perhaps even rightfully so. But Naruko had made the choices she was forced to make. She had never been able to disclose the full extent of the mission, and Sasuke had made it clear, never to sacrifice herself. Yet, in a way, that was exactly what she had done. The only difference was that she had survived. This time, the mission had extended beyond its original time frame, largely because she had been unconscious for 2 days. Nearly everything that could have gone wrong did. As she made her way through the village, she spotted Sasuke and Kakashi in the distance. Unwilling to face that conversation just yet, she quickly disappeared with a shunshine before Sasuke could notice her. Kakashi, however, caught sight of her retreat and merely smiled. He was relieved to see Naruko back safely. He understood her hesitation, she wasn't yet ready to confront Sasuke, and he chose to keep that knowledge to himself. He knew, without a doubt, that the conversation would happen that night, whether Naruko was prepared for it or not. Naruko stepped into the office and knelt before Hiruzen, her head respectfully bowed. Commander Wolf was already present, maintaining a composed silence. Naruko patiently awaited either of them to speak or to be given permission to do so. "Fox, what can you report?" Wolf inquired, appearing prepared to lead the discussion between himself and Hiruzen. "I have gathered information on their border patrol routes and schedules. It is detailed on this map," Naruko stated, presenting the document. "Additionally, I have marked their patrol units and key strongholds in red as they approach Iwagakure. I managed to gather an overview of their village's security system, however, they became aware of my presence, forcing me to retreat to a safe location before they could track me down." "Understood, Fox. You have done an excellent job." "Thank you, Commander." "Naruko-kun, are you all right?" Hiruzen asked, his keen eyes noticing a brief moment of hesitation. Naruko paused for a fraction of a second, but both the Hokage and the Anbu commander, trained in observation, did not miss the subtle sign. "Hi," she responded. The two exchanged glances, each contemplating possible explanations. One major concern was Naruko's vision. They understood that the success of the delay strategy heavily relied on her Mangekyo Sharingan, and such an intense strain must have affected her eyesight. However, they were uncertain about the extent of the impact. Another pressing question was how she felt emotionally. Experiencing so many battles and facing such intense situations was not something a person could simply move on from without consequence. These things required time to process. Even a single confrontation could leave some shinobi deeply unsettled, to the point that they never returned to active duty. And Naruko? She had faced nearly 100 opponents, perhaps slightly fewer, but the scale of what she had endured remained immense. "Naruko-kun, did you encounter any other adversaries?" "Not significantly," Naruko replied. "I primarily engaged a few patrol units using lightning-enhanced techniques. My intention was to create discord between them and Kumagakure, as they might seek an alliance due to their shared grievances against Konoha." "So, the rookie has taken on the role of an intelligence operative, I see. Well done, Fox. Your strategic thinking and ability to act decisively under pressure are commendable. These are qualities befitting a captain. However, I will not be promoting you just yet," Wolf stated. "You need more field experience. To ensure that, you will be taking on missions more frequently while undergoing leadership training. Do you understand?" Wolf met Naruko's gaze, already anticipating her response. This had been one of her aspirations ever since joining the ranks. She possessed the necessary skills and qualities, what she required now was more experience. In many ways, experience is the greatest teacher. While knowledge and skill are vital, seasoned understanding often determines success, whether in battle or in life. Every challenge, encounter, and relationship contributes to personal growth. Some experiences lead to failure, while others foster progress, but each lesson shapes future decisions. In combat, uncertainty and hesitation can be costly, not only for oneself but for an entire team. Naruko had demonstrated leadership potential. Now, she needed more time in the field to refine her instincts, strengthen her team, and ensure that every mission ended with her squad returning safely. "Hi, Commander. I won't let you down." Wolf gave a nod of approval, while Hiruzen observed silently, uncertain of how to express his thoughts. He looked at Naruko, unsure where their relationship currently stood. "Nah. It's okay, Gigi," Naruko interrupted gently. "I'm still healing, but that doesn't erase everything you've done for me." "Thank you, Naruko-kun. May I be excused? I'd like to see my squad." "Yes, you're dismissed." With that, Naruko disappeared in a blur, leaving behind a smiling Hiruzen and a satisfied commander. She was truly growing into something remarkable. Anbu Squad Row, Locker Room. Naruko stood outside the door for a moment before pushing it open. She had discarded her armor during the mission, having deemed it beyond repair. As she entered, the squad members inside halted their activities, turning to face her. She stood there, her mask stained with traces of battle, her attire worn from the trials she had endured. For a moment, silence filled the room as they took in her presence. "I'm glad you all made it back," Naruko finally spoke. Her words broke the stillness, prompting her comrades to step forward. "Naruko, I should have." "It's all right, Captain. You did what you believed was best." "Hey, Naruko. How have you been?" "Feeling better now, Hinto. We should definitely go out for a drink sometime." "Absolutely. Though I still can't understand how you managed to outdrink nearly everyone." "Yeah. Maybe one day we'll figure it out." "Naruko, you reckless one. Don't make decisions like that again." Yugao embraced Naruko tightly. Even though she knew Naruko had made the right choice, it was still difficult to accept. "I'm sorry, but it was the only way to protect everyone and ensure we returned with the necessary intelligence." "Always prioritizing the mission, huh, Naruko?" "Always. So, Zoro? Up for a spar later?" "Of course." "Naruko, take a few days to rest and recover." "Understood, Captain." As Naruko strolled through the village, she took in the serene atmosphere as much as her sight allowed. Everything seemed so peaceful, almost as if there wasn't an impending conflict. It became clear just how little the villagers knew about the true state of the shinobi world. How would they react if they understood the reality of war? Did every village always seem this serene? Was this truly how all the others were? If so, then why had conflict ever existed? Couldn't everyone simply strive to live harmoniously in these peaceful communities? If this tranquility was merely an illusion, an instance of ignorance is bliss, then it was a comforting one. To live without the constant fear of war, without the risk of losing those dearest to you, seemed like an ideal existence. Observing such calmness made one wonder, why would anyone seek to disrupt another's peace? If both sides lived contentedly within their own villages, what was the purpose of igniting conflict? So many questions, yet so few answers. Perhaps one day, she would uncover the truth behind them all. Then again, as long as Sasuke was safe, Naruko found that little else mattered. Was that selfish? Maybe, but Sasuke was the one person who meant everything to her. Without Sasuke, she felt lost. Realizing that, she understood that she would stand against anyone who dared to threaten her. Perhaps that very sentiment was what had fueled wars throughout history. "Kyubi? You've been around for a long time, right?" "Yes." "Has peace ever truly lasted?" "It has always been temporary. Greed and vengeance tend to lead to another war. No side ever truly wins. Everyone loses someone they care about. Do they realize that?" "I'm not sure. You humans can be quite stubborn." "Perhaps." "Perhaps what?" Naruko turned at the sound of a soft voice behind her, but there was no one there. What in the world? She glanced around, but her surroundings were empty. Who had spoken just now? Maybe I'm imagining things. Well, no use delaying. Time to head home. After a 20-minute walk, she arrived at the house. The evening air was cool, and the windows remained dark. That was unusual, but she brushed off the thought. Stepping inside, she found the house eerily quiet, with no sign of anyone present. The atmosphere felt undisturbed, as if untouched for days. Sasuke wouldn't typically be out at this hour, but perhaps she had gone to spend time with friends. She hadn't done so much since they both graduated early, and it would make sense for her to take a break. After all, she had been diligently training for quite some time. As Naruko walked through the house, it became apparent that the main areas had remained unused. The kitchen showed no signs of recent meals, The living room was perfectly arranged, the dojo's weapons were neatly stored, and the training grounds appeared untouched. Something felt off. Perhaps Sasuke had shifted her training to Ground 7 permanently, since Kakashi had designated it for their team's use. Given that she was currently the only active member, she likely had full access unless Kakashi required the space. Still, she usually trained at home as well. This was unusual. Concern creeping in, Naruko approached Sasuke's room and knocked gently. No response. Thinking she might be asleep, Naruko cautiously opened the door, only to find the bed neatly made and the room empty. Now she was truly worried. It seemed as though no one had been in the house for several days, and Sasuke was nowhere to be found. Where could she have gone? Hoping she was simply with friends, Naruko decided to take a shower and get some rest. She would see Sasuke in the morning. Frustration and unease filled her as she entered her own room, pushing the door open with a bit more force than necessary. She had been looking forward to seeing Sasuke, but now all she could do was hope she was safe. The room was darker than usual, and with her vision slightly strained, she struggled to see clearly. Shutting the door, she sat on her bed, lost in thought. Then, she sensed someone beside her. Startled, Naruko immediately reached for a kunai. The figure in the bed jolted as well, but unlike her, they relaxed quickly. Naru-chan? The familiar voice of Sasuke instantly put Naruko at ease. Sasuke-chan. Without hesitation, Naruko pulled her into a tight embrace, relief washing over her. The mission had been dangerous, she had faced the possibility of never seeing Sasuke again. I thought you had left. The house seemed completely empty for days. I haven't stepped outside this room since. Since when? Since Yugao and Hinto came by. So, you know. Naruko averted her gaze, guilt weighing on her. She had never intended to make Sasuke worry. Sasuke simply nodded, then, without warning, delivered a firm punch to Naruko's stomach. Before Naruko could react, Sasuke pulled her back into an embrace. You're such an idiot, she muttered. I didn't have a choice, Naruko sighed, knowing she had worried Sasuke, but grateful beyond words to have her here, safe and sound. I know. It's silly to think I'd be upset with you because of this. How did you? We've been together for a long time, Naru, and we've lived together for years now. Do you really think I don't understand how you feel or what you're thinking? Well, I mean, it's not like you can read minds. No, but I can read you. You don't express yourself much, so I've always had to figure it out. I was really worried, but I'm just relieved that you're home safe. Me too. Naruko gently kissed her forehead and pulled her into a hug. Let me rest for a few hours, then we can spar. She nodded, letting Naruko rest. A short while later, only about 2 hours, Naruko got up and changed into a fresh set of Anbu attire, minus the armor. To Naruko's surprise, she had insisted they go to Training Ground 7. Naruko wasn't sure why she was so set on that particular location but decided not to question it. In the end, she was just eager to see how much her friend had improved since their last spar. It had been quite some time. While Naruko had been occupied with Anbu duties and intense training, she knew Sasuke must have been honing her skills as well. What Naruko didn't realize was that Sasuke had awakened her Sharingan. Then again, Sasuke herself had yet to notice. With everything that had happened, she hadn't even stepped outside much since hearing the news. Upon arriving at the training ground, Naruko quickly realized why Sasuke wanted to come here. A crowd had gathered in the clearing. Their friends were all there. Kakashi, Yugao, and even Hiruzen had come. Since Kakashi was present, a certain energetic, green-clad ninja had also arrived, enthusiastically speaking about the power of youth. A few other unfamiliar faces stood among them, all seemingly interested in what was about to unfold. What's going on here? Naruko asked, raising an eyebrow. Well? We haven't sparred in a while, and I haven't seen my friends in ages. Word got around, and, well, here we are, Sasuke said with a smile, waving as their friends greeted them. Seeing the expression on Naruko's face made her chuckle. Naruko wasn't particularly fond of being the center of attention and had, at times, kept to herself due to the way others had treated her. But Sasuke knew it wasn't just that, Naruko simply wasn't the most social person. Not shy, but also not someone who actively sought out large gatherings. With a sigh, Naruko gave in and nodded before draping an arm around Sasuke's shoulders, pulling her close. Give it your all. Don't hold back, no matter what anyone says. Just do your best. All right. I'll use my Sharingan. Are you sure? Yes. All right then. Kakashi stepped between them, offering a small smile. He raised his arm, glancing at both fighters, who nodded in readiness. The moment his arm dropped, he swiftly leapt back, just in time, as Sasuke had already lunged toward Naruko. Naruko activated her Sharingan, grateful for the slight improvement it provided to her otherwise blurred vision. However, she still struggled with certain details. Sasuke aimed a punch at her face, but Naruko sidestepped, using Sasuke's own momentum to toss her aside. Sasuke flipped mid-air, landing on her feet before attempting a kick. Naruko ducked, then lunged forward in an attempt to bring Sasuke down. However, Sasuke was quick, she leapt over Naruko, landing a solid kick to her back. The impact sent Naruko to the ground, but she quickly rebounded, ready for another exchange. Sasuke had landed the first hit. Naruko felt an instinctual urge to smile and acknowledge her improvement, but she knew the match was far from over. Unbeknownst to her, several Anbu members had arrived among the spectators, including Commander Wolf. They were eager to see how Naruko would fare after everything she had been through. Both Hiruzen and Wolf were particularly interested in assessing how her vision affected her combat abilities. Hiruzen observed closely, noticing subtle delays in Naruko's reactions, small hesitations that others might have missed. It was clear that her vision wasn't as sharp as it once was, making it harder for her to read attacks quickly. Meanwhile, Sasuke's confidence grew. Landing the first blow had encouraged her, and she was clearly enjoying the challenge. Naruko, on the other hand, remained on the defensive, focused on analyzing Sasuke's movements. Sasuke didn't mind. If anything, she welcomed the opportunity to be the one pressing the attack. She rushed forward, spinning into a heel kick. Naruko raised her right arm to block before swiftly wrapping her arm around Sasuke's leg, using the momentum to slam her to the ground. Before Naruko could follow up with a finishing move, Sasuke rolled away just in time. What's this? No offense today, Naru? Sasuke teased, though she was genuinely curious. Normally, Naruko would have switched tactics by now, overwhelming her opponent with a relentless assault. Naruko exhaled, eyes narrowing with determination. Let's take this up a notch, shall we? Naruko vs. Sasuke. Naruko swiftly grabbed 3 shuriken and launched them toward Sasuke. In response, Sasuke skillfully deflected them before charging forward with her kunai. Naruko remained still, appearing to prepare for defense, but a subtle smirk formed on her face. She anticipated Sasuke's next move and had a strategy in place. As Sasuke closed the distance, she thrust her kunai forward, seemingly striking Naruko in the chest. A moment of silence swept through the arena. The audience gasped, and Sasuke froze in place, her mind racing. Then, to her astonishment, Naruko smiled. Before anyone could comprehend what had just happened, Naruko's form dispersed into a swarm of crows, scattering into the air. The crowd's reaction. Did she just land a direct hit? Sakura questioned in disbelief. No way. Ino turned away, unable to process what she had witnessed. From the stands, Hiruzen and Wolf observed with intrigue. Both had a hunch about Naruko's tactic, though they couldn't pinpoint why she had chosen to use it. There was something peculiar about her approach, almost as if she had no desire to be fully engaged in this fight. Sasuke's realization. Naru. Sasuke's eyes widened as she registered what had just happened. The sensation of her blade piercing Naruko had felt real, yet now she was left standing in confusion. Then it dawned on her, Naruko had been a step ahead all along. A few feet away, Naruko's form reassembled from the flock of crows, standing perfectly composed. The spectators who had figured out her tactics sighed in relief. Sasuke clenched her fists, frustrated by her own oversight. It had been a while since Naruko used this technique, and she had momentarily forgotten about it. "How long?" Sasuke asked, irritation evident in her voice. "What do you mean?" Naruko responded with a knowing look. "How long was I fighting a clone?" Sasuke pressed. "The moment you knocked me to the ground, I switched with my crow clone," Naruko revealed as she seemingly faded into existence behind Sasuke. "Genjutsu? I should have realized." "There are many ways to initiate genjutsu," Naruko explained. "You made it easy when you kicked me. Now, let's take this to the next level, shall we?" Without hesitation, Naruko assumed a battle stance and launched into action. The exchange of blows. In an instant, she used the body flicker technique to appear right in front of Sasuke, delivering a swift kick to her midsection, sending her flying backward. Before Sasuke could recover, Naruko appeared behind her, striking again. This time, Sasuke managed to regain her footing and landed gracefully, only to find Naruko in front of her once more, executing a spinning backhand strike. Sasuke barely managed to block the attack before Naruko followed up with an elbow strike aimed at her jaw. Anticipating the move, Sasuke leapt backward to avoid it. Determined to counter, Sasuke quickly retrieved 5 shuriken and performed a set of hand seals. "Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu," she murmured, causing the 5 projectiles to multiply into 20. "Impressive," Naruko acknowledged as she analyzed the attack. She maneuvered into what appeared to be a safe zone, avoiding 15 of the shuriken. However, the remaining 5 caught her off guard, grazing her arms and striking her left leg. A sharp sting followed as she removed the embedded shuriken. "How did you miss that?" Sasuke questioned, puzzled. "It was clear as day, you should have been able to see them." Naruko forced a weak smile and shrugged. "Maybe I was overconfident," she said, though there was more to it than she let on. The crowd's concern. "Great hit!" Ino cheered. Kakashi, however, observed with concern. Something wasn't right. Naruko had never been one to overlook such an obvious attack. A shift in the battle. Sasuke charged forward, gripping her sword tightly. Naruko responded by pulling out a kunai and gripping it in a reverse hold. As Sasuke infused her blade with lightning chakra, she slashed downward. Naruko moved to block the attack, but the instant their weapons clashed, her eyes widened in surprise, her kunai shattered, and the electrified blade left a cut across her forearm. "I didn't see the chakra enhancement. Is my vision really declining this much?" Naruko thought to herself. Dropping the broken kunai, she clenched her wounded arm as a faint numbness spread through it. From the stands, Hiruzen and Wolf exchanged knowing looks. This only confirmed their growing concern. Naruko needed the necessary treatment soon. Kakashi, meanwhile, felt a sense of pride in Sasuke's growth. Though she couldn't maintain the lightning enhancement for long, she had executed it skillfully. Naruko refocused and gathered her chakra, launching a fireball toward Sasuke. Reacting swiftly, Sasuke countered with her own fireball. However, the moment their techniques clashed, she noticed Naruko reappearing beside her, delivering a forceful kick. As the battle progressed, something began to shift in Naruko's demeanor. Her calculated and composed fighting style became more aggressive, her movements driven by raw intensity rather than strategy. A faint red aura flickered around her as her energy surged. Realizing what was happening, Naruko quickly shook her head, regaining control. The aura dissipated, and she returned to her usual composed state. Sasuke furrowed her brows, confused by the sudden change. The audience also watched with curiosity. Naruko's abrupt shift in behavior was perplexing. The battle was far from over, but the question remained, what was happening to Naruko? Phoenix Sage Flower Jutsu. Sasuke murmured as she swiftly released 10 shuriken, each engulfed in flames. The fiery projectiles sped toward Naruko, who managed to deflect most of them, but two slipped past her defenses. One grazed her abdomen, while the other embedded itself in her shoulder. Without hesitation, she pulled the shuriken free and swiftly extinguished the flames. From the stands, Hiruzen, Kakashi, and Wolf exchanged glances, their expressions growing serious. This latest exchange made it undeniable: Naruko's vision had significantly weakened. She should have been able to counter that attack effortlessly. Sasuke observed Naruko with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Never before had she appeared so vulnerable. While Sasuke had improved her own skills, this felt different. There was another factor at play, something beyond simple combat growth. With a confident smirk, Naruko sheathed her tanto and spoke the name of a technique that Sasuke had never been able to overcome, no matter how much she trained. Teleportation Jutsu. The audience. Teleportation Jutsu? What is she planning? I'm not sure, Sakura. Just keep watching, Ino replied, a hint of impatience in her voice. Is this the moment she finishes the fight? Kakashi muttered to himself. Guy, standing nearby, gave him a puzzled look. What do you mean? Naruko has been struggling this whole time, Guy pointed out. Kakashi shook his head. Come on, Guy. With your expertise in taijutsu, you must have noticed it too. She's been holding back, or rather, she's been impaired in some way. Guy narrowed his eyes and thought back on the battle. There had been several moments where Naruko had made mistakes, but he had assumed they were minor miscalculations. Yet, upon reflection, those weaknesses had been repeatedly exploited. Could it be her vision? But doesn't the Sharingan allow her to anticipate attacks? Guy questioned. Yes, but something is off, Kakashi confirmed. He understood the toll of the Mangekyo Sharingan all too well. He rarely used his own, as it drained too much chakra and came at a steep cost in combat. Hiruzen stroked his beard in thought. I wonder how much she has refined this technique. Wolf, standing beside him, gave a knowing glance. You have no idea. The real question is, how far is she willing to push it? Naruko versus Sasuke. All right. Here we go, Sasuke thought, steadying herself. If I can hold out for 3 minutes, this technique will wear her down. It's too demanding to sustain for long. Naruko began moving in a rapid circular motion around Sasuke, deliberately building suspense. The crowd initially seemed unimpressed, but their reactions quickly changed as Naruko multiplied before their eyes. Within moments, 12 identical versions of her surrounded Sasuke. Each clone halted simultaneously, raising their tantos. In unison, they ran their left hands along the backs of the blades, igniting them in flames. Uchiha style, Dance of the Sun Halo. Naruko murmured, and in a synchronized motion, every clone slashed their weapons through the air, sending arcs of fire toward Sasuke. Sasuke remained composed, though she couldn't ignore the rising tension. This was going to be a challenge. Her mind worked quickly. Attacking a clone was ineffective since they were mere projections, yet they could harm her. It was an unsettling predicament. Regular elemental clones vanished upon impact, but these were different. Naruko had once shared hints on countering this strategy, but with the Sharingan, it would have been much easier. Without it, nearly anyone would struggle against this technique. The real drawback for Naruko was the physical toll. The technique was powerful but incredibly exhausting. It allowed her to control the battle, but only for a limited time. She was working on extending its duration, but for now, she could only maintain top speed for 3 minutes before slowing down. As the fiery slashes intensified, Sasuke searched desperately for the real Naruko. Suddenly, her instincts flared, something wasn't right. She surged her chakra, breaking free from an illusion just in time to evade a barrage of kunai. This is getting dangerous. She's layering genjutsu on top of her attacks. How do I counter this? The flames were beginning to take their toll. Each dodge became harder, and her body was accumulating minor burns. In her desperation, her Sharingan activated instinctively. For a fleeting moment, Naruko paused, taking in the sight. Then, she smiled. She noticed that everything became clearer, and time seemed to slow down slightly. When she saw Naruko pause and smile at her, she realized what had happened. She had finally awakened her Sharingan. However, there was no time to celebrate as they were still in the middle of a battle. Determined, she located her target and launched a fireball in his direction. To her surprise, it passed right through him. What? She muttered in disbelief. It's called the teleportation jutsu for a reason, Naruko said with a playful smirk before swiftly tapping the back of her opponent's neck, causing her to lose consciousness. Before she could hit the ground, Naruko caught her gently and let out a small smile. She carefully brushed a strand of hair from her face before sitting down, allowing her to rest on her lap. The battle had taken a toll on Naruko. The strain of using advanced speed techniques, combined with her already deteriorating vision, left her feeling drained. She had noticed that ever since her eyesight had weakened, using the Sharingan only made her eyes more fatigued. It was frustrating, but she believed there was nothing she could do about it, or so she thought. Though her wounds had healed, the soreness remained. As the battle concluded, everyone gathered around, impressed by what they had just witnessed. Hiruzen, Kakashi, and Wolf exchanged knowing looks, aware of the struggles Naruko had been facing. Letting out a deep sigh, she requested to be alone for a moment. The three nodded, staying back to speak with her. Kakashi was the first to break the silence. So, when were you planning on telling us about your deteriorating vision? You knew about my eyes? Naruko asked, looking away. Kakashi lifted his headband, revealing his own Sharingan. Yeah. I understand more than you think. Naruko lowered her gaze, feeling a pang of shame. For so long, she had believed she was the only one facing this struggle, forgetting that Kakashi had endured his own hardships. He had lost dear friends and had seen things no one should ever have to witness. Kakashi's voice was firm but gentle. Naruko, be honest. How bad is your vision? She hesitated for a moment before finally admitting, I can only see about 50% of what I used to. Kakashi sighed. That explains why you missed so many attacks and reacted slower than usual. You couldn't see clearly, could you? Naruko shook her head. I haven't found a way to fix it. I don't think there is one. To her surprise, Kakashi chuckled. For once, you're wrong, Naruko. Consider it Shisui's final gift to you. What? She exclaimed, eyes widening. Come to the office tomorrow afternoon, and you'll understand. Hi, she responded, nodding. With that, the others left, giving Naruko a moment of peace with the unconscious Sasuke. She knew that when Sasuke woke up, she would be frustrated about losing the fight. But Naruko also knew that once she started training her to master the Sharingan, all that frustration would turn into determination. A small smile crept onto her face. Sasuke had finally achieved the power she had longed for, but Naruko hoped she would never have to bear the burden of the eyes that symbolized loss and sorrow. Still, one question lingered in her mind. What exactly was Shisui's final gift? He had always been thoughtful and had a habit of planning ahead. Could he have anticipated this struggle? Did he leave behind something that could help her regain her vision? After resting for a while, Naruko finally gathered her strength and gently lifted Sasuke into her arms. Carrying her in a secure yet comfortable hold, she began the walk home. About halfway there, Sasuke stirred awake, blinking up at her. I'm guessing you have 2 questions, right? Naruko asked with a knowing smile. Sasuke nodded. Yes. First, what happened to you? Most of my shuriken techniques should never have hit you. Naruko sighed. My eyesight is failing because of a special ability I use. What kind of ability does that? Sasuke asked, concern in her voice. I've come to understand that every technique, no matter how powerful, comes with a cost. Nothing is without its flaws. Not even these eyes. Naruko met her gaze as her own eyes transformed, the Tomoe and her Sharingan spinning until they shifted into the Mangekyo form. Sasuke's eyes widened in astonishment. She had always believed the Sharingan had only 3 stages, marked by the number of Tomoe. She never imagined there was another level beyond that. However, her awe quickly turned into concern as she remembered what Naruko had just told her. "Naru. How bad is it?" she asked softly. Naruko hesitated before finally admitting, "I can't even make out your face. I haven't been able to see your smile at all." Hearing that, Sasuke gently placed a hand on Naruko's cheek and guided her into a comforting embrace. "We'll find a way to make things better, Naru-kun," she assured her with determination. Naruko felt a sense of warmth at her words. "Apparently, Gigi mentioned that Nii-san left me something, Shisui's final gift. He made it sound like it might restore my vision. I want you to come with me when I find out." "Of course, Naru," Sasuke said without hesitation. "Even if it doesn't work, we'll find another way together." Her reassurance made Naruko feel lighter. For so long, she had faced her struggles alone, but now she knew she didn't have to anymore. She had someone by her side who she could depend on, just as much as they depended on her. "You did great today," Naruko told her with a smile. "And for your second question, yes, I'll help you train your Sharingan whenever you're ready." Excitement sparkled in Sasuke's eyes at that. Now, she could finally train with Naruko on equal footing, using the very eyes that held limitless potential. The next morning, Naruko woke up feeling a familiar warmth beside her. Sasuke had fallen asleep next to her again, and Naruko found comfort in it. Though it had only happened a few times before, she realized how much she wished for it to be permanent. However, asking her outright felt difficult, so she never did. It always seemed to happen naturally, through circumstance. She gently rubbed Sasuke's shoulder, causing her to stir awake. As she opened her eyes, she smiled at Naruko, not that Naruko could see it, but the warmth in Sasuke's voice made it clear. "After you help me train my Sharingan, I want to do what we did before you left for boot camp," Sasuke said softly. Are you sure?" Naruko stammered, caught off guard. "You promised. It's been a month. I'm starting to lose my patience, Naruko." Yes. As you wish." She heard her full name being used and immediately understood that Sasuke was serious. This was not the time to argue. "So," she complied. "Don't pretend like you aren't interested as well." "Hey, don't do this to me." Sasuke giggled before playfully kissing her and then swiftly moving away just as Naruko was about to react. Before she could attempt to continue, Sasuke vanished in a blur, appearing by the doorway with a teasing grin. "That was just unfair. After training, Naru-kun. After training." "Alright, fine." During training, Naruko pushed Sasuke to her limits. She suspected it was payback for the earlier tease, but Naruko simply claimed it was the best way to strengthen her visual abilities. In truth, it was likely a combination of both. She relentlessly hurled kunai and shuriken at speeds that only the Sharingan could follow. Sasuke had no choice but to react faster than ever before, which in turn improved her endurance, agility, reflexes, and mastery of the Sharingan all at once. As training progressed, Naruko shifted focus to the more intricate aspects of the Sharingan, teaching Sasuke how to utilize its ability to replicate techniques, mimic movements, and enhance perception. Though all Sharingan users shared the same fundamental potential, the true strength of the eyes depended on how they were wielded. Naruko's proficiency in genjutsu surpassed even legendary figures like Shisui. While both excelled in illusionary techniques, the addition of the Sharingan elevated their abilities to extraordinary heights. Sasuke, on the other hand, did not initially display a natural talent for genjutsu. However, the Sharingan granted her a significant advantage, as even those with minimal skill in the art could still become proficient thanks to its unique properties. The true strength of the Uchiha clan's dojutsu lay in its ability to cast genjutsu through mere eye contact, one of the reasons they were so widely respected. In battle, eye contact was nearly unavoidable, making it effortless for an Uchiha to trap their opponent in an illusion. This, combined with the Sharingan's ability to predict and analyze movements, was what made them such formidable warriors. The ninjutsu abilities granted by the Sharingan provided the user with an exceptional photographic memory, enabling them to accurately replicate hand signs. Additionally, since they could perceive chakra, they gained an understanding of how it needed to be controlled to execute the copied technique effectively. In essence, possessing the Sharingan significantly enhanced one's potential. For a highly skilled shinobi, acquiring this ability meant reaching an extraordinary level of proficiency, making them exceptionally formidable in battle. Now, remember, Sasuke-chan, this is merely a tool. If you become overly reliant on it, it could become a weakness. The eyes consume chakra, and while we Uchiha possess a significant amount, it will take time before you can maintain them continuously without issue. I understand. What's the next step? That depends on you. What would you like to focus on? What did you choose to specialize in? Despite my combat skills, I never found enjoyment in direct confrontation. Instead, I focused on genjutsu as a way to resolve conflicts without resorting to unnecessary battles. That's why I excel in it. It didn't seem that way earlier. You looked like you were enjoying yourself for a moment. I'm not entirely sure what happened. I may have unintentionally tapped into a power I am not yet ready to control. Well, let's see. Genjutsu isn't really my style, but I'm not sure what would suit me best. Well, Sasuke-chan, you're in luck. I've mastered a variety of techniques, and I'll help you do the same. All right? She nodded enthusiastically and embraced her friend. However, their moment was interrupted when a hawk descended and landed beside them. It carried a message, and as Naruko opened it, a hint of nervousness crossed her face. What is it? They're calling me to the office. Sasuke took her hand and offered a reassuring smile. Though Naruko couldn't see it, she smiled back, comforted by the silent support. With that, she transported them both to the office. Ah, Naruko-kun, Sasuke. Good to see you. Hey, Gigi. Sasuke noted that Naruko no longer seemed as upset with the Hokage. While the pain was still present, the anger had subsided. Both she and Hiruzen noticed Naruko's nervous demeanor. Naruko, what do you know about the Mangekyo Sharingan? Kakashi asked, his gaze steady. Not much, Naruko admitted. I only realized I had awakened it the night you all came to tell me that my older brother was gone. But I couldn't activate it properly until the night Sasuke-chan decided to stay with me. That night, I unlocked its power again. She chose not to mention the promise she had made that night or how the eyes sometimes made her emotions feel different. However, she did explain how she had noticed her vision gradually deteriorating. Initially, she thought it was simply exhaustion from using an ability she wasn't accustomed to. However, during a recent mission, the decline in her eyesight had become significantly worse. Now, with a clearer understanding of the timeline, the others grasped how everything had unfolded. They were also intrigued by the unique abilities Naruko had awakened. Her control over lightning and storms was a rare and formidable power. Unfortunately, with the standard Mangekyo Sharingan, you won't be able to master the technique completely, Hiruzen stated. Standard Mangekyo? What do you mean, Oji-san? You'll need to read this. Hiruzen handed Naruko a scroll. It bore the Uchiha crest and was sealed with Shisui's signature. Carefully, she unrolled it and began to read. Dear Naruko. If you're reading this, it means, first of all, I am no longer here. And that's truly unfortunate. Hopefully, I had more time, but if not, I can only hope you're doing well. Secondly, if this letter has reached you, it means you've awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. On top of that, I suspect your vision is already deteriorating. I had hoped you would never have to bear the burden of these eyes, but fate has a way of making its own decisions. Your birthday is coming up soon, isn't it? I can't believe you're about to turn 6. I remember the day you were born. Your father was so excited. I want you to always remember that you were deeply loved, Naruko. By now, I hope you've learned about your parents, Minato Uchiha, the 4th Hokage, and Kushina Uzumaki, the Jinchuriki before you. Oh. And your own Jinchuriki status. I'm getting sidetracked, but I suppose it's because writing this feels important. Our eyes, the Mangekyo Sharingan, grant us incredible abilities, allowing us to protect those we care about. But they come at a cost. Overusing them will eventually rob you of your sight. However, there is a way to restore and even enhance your vision. As my final gift to you, I leave you the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. If something happens to me, my eyes will be entrusted to Itachi. He is the only one I trust to safeguard them until the time is right. When that moment comes, you will undergo a procedure to receive them. Your vision will be restored, and you will never lose your sight from overuse again. I have a mission tonight, just before your birthday, and I can't shake the feeling that something is amiss. But I will finish this letter with one last piece of advice. Naruko, never let loneliness consume you. Find companionship, surround yourself with those who truly care for you. Love has the power to keep the darkness at bay. It will be your greatest strength. Take care, little sister. With love. Shisui. Naruko looked up, tears welling in her eyes. She could hardly believe it, Shisui had truly accounted for everything. On top of that, the letter contained a clear timeline, carefully detailing events leading up to that fateful night. The final entry was completed on the very night he was lost. For now, she decided to keep this revelation to herself. The letter indicated that Itachi would have the eyes. But what now? Naruko-chan, are you all right? Naruko lifted her head as a crow appeared before her. Without hesitation, she handed the scroll to the bird, which promptly dissolved into feathers. Yes. Let's do this. There was a certain urgency in her tone, as though she were racing against time. Several hours later, Naruko awoke in a hospital bed, bandages wrapped around her eyes. Carefully, she unraveled them, and when she opened her eyes, she could see as clearly as ever. Her gaze immediately fell upon Sasuke, who sat beside her, while Kakashi, Hiruzen, and Wolf stood in front of her. Activating her eternal Mangekyo, she took in the new design, smaller triangles, each pointing toward the four-bladed shuriken pattern Shisui had possessed in his own Mangekyo. In an instant, Naruko vanished and reappeared before Hiruzen, slamming him against the wall. What mission did you send him on that cost him his life? Her voice carried a chilling edge, sending an unmistakable wave of unease through the room. Hiruzen was stunned. Not only had he failed to track her movement, but neither could the others. Ordinarily, they were all highly skilled enough to follow such motions, yet Naruko's speed had become nearly impossible to trace. The enhanced perception granted by her new eyes allowed her to move with unparalleled precision. What do you mean? Don't act like you don't know. I've been lied to enough. He told me he was leaving for a mission that night. There was no so-called accident. What really happened? Naru. Please, this isn't like you. Sasuke was the only one who remained unaffected by Naruko's overwhelming intensity. She alone was spared the sheer force of emotion radiating from her. Naruko turned to her, and in that moment, Sasuke saw nothing but raw pain reflected in her gaze, grief, anger, emptiness. The sheer weight of it made Sasuke drop to her knees. It was more than she could comprehend, a sorrow too deep to measure. Hiruzen now understood what she saw. His expression was heavy with regret. Kakashi and Wolf stood tense, unsure of what would unfold next. Before Naruko had awakened, Hiruzen had instructed them to let him handle any situation that arose. But now, they questioned whether he truly could. Naruko was no fool. She knew that even with her new abilities, strength alone would not be enough to overcome the experienced Hokage. He had earned his title as the god of shinobi for a reason. But she didn't want a battle, she wanted the truth. All of you. All you've ever done is deceive me. Am I nothing to any of you? Her voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that made their hearts sink. You mean everything to me? Sasuke stood back up, slowly approaching her. Naruko turned toward her but hesitated. For a brief moment, her overwhelming energy wavered, as if she were caught between two choices. The others held their breath, wondering if this would be the turning point, but then she averted her gaze, and her power surged once more. Kakashi realized something in that instant: if Naruko had a single weakness, it was Sasuke. But right now, there was nothing he could do. It was up to her to reach Naruko, or for Naruko to find her own way back. Wolf, though concerned about the tension in the room, couldn't help but feel intrigued. He wanted to see what Naruko would do next. Yet, at the same time, he hoped she wouldn't make a decision she would later regret. Experience had taught him that a single choice could change everything. Subtly, he made a small signal that went unnoticed by all, except for a certain bird. "What did you do? Speak," Naruko demanded, her frustration mounting. Hiruzen remained silent, his gaze not one of defiance, but of sorrow. He looked at her not as a powerful shinobi standing before him, but as the same child who once admired him. "Fine," she said, her voice steady. "If you won't tell me willingly." "Naruko, don't. That genjutsu is something you should only use on an opponent," Kakashi called out urgently, his voice filled with concern. He knew Naruko might attempt to use Shisui's ultimate genjutsu, and the mere possibility unsettled him. There was no definitive information available on the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and he had no desire to discover its effects firsthand. If Naruko truly possessed the ability to wield it, then there would be little they could do to stop her. No one would ever know if they were under her influence. That was the burden Shisui had carried. Though he had never misused his power against an ally, many remained wary of him. The look in Naruko's eyes made Kakashi realize something troubling. At that moment, she perceived Hiruzen as an adversary. That did not sit well with him. Naruko was being consumed by deep-seated emotions, teetering on the edge of a path from which there might be no return. "This is your last chance." Hiruzen, however, merely smiled weakly at the young kunoichi, seemingly accepting whatever was to come. Regret lingered in his expression, regret for many things, but most of all, for how he had handled Naruko's past. Perhaps this was his way of atoning. Unbeknownst to Hiruzen, Kakashi, or Sasuke, a crow had been observing them from the window. Silent and watchful, it suddenly took flight, landing on Hiruzen's shoulder. As Naruko's gaze fell upon it, the bird's eyes shifted to a deep crimson, revealing a Mangekyo Sharingan in the form of a three-pointed shuriken. Naruko's world changed in an instant. Tsukuyomi? The surroundings darkened, and the sky turned a deep, eerie red. Everything was silent, empty. Then, out of nowhere, a familiar figure materialized before her. "Itachi?" Naruko's voice wavered, her eyes widening in disbelief. A calm, composed Itachi stood before her, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Naruko-kun. It has been some time. How are you here?" she demanded, a mix of confusion and frustration in her voice. Itachi remained unshaken, his demeanor steady. He regarded the young girl standing before him, only 11 years old, yet carrying so much weight on her shoulders. A small, nearly imperceptible smile appeared on his lips, but he did not allow it to linger. "There is much you do not yet understand." Naruko's fists clenched. "Enough riddles. Just tell me the truth. Why did you destroy your clan? Do you have any idea what you put Sasuke-chan through?" The intensity in her voice subsided slightly as she spoke, which did not go unnoticed by Itachi. Though relieved, he did not let it show. "Naruko-kun, there are truths you are not yet ready to hear. But I am glad to know how deeply you care for my sister. You have been a source of light in her life. However, I must warn you, you are walking a dangerous path, one that could consume you." Naruko shook her head. "You expect me to understand? You betrayed your own family, your friends. How can you remain so calm? They say you were unstable, that you..." She hesitated before continuing. "They claimed you were responsible for Nisan's fate. But I know that isn't true. His letter proves otherwise." Itachi's expression remained unreadable. "And what exactly do you know?" "He started writing to me before my 6th birthday. He had a feeling things would turn out this way. In his final words, he mentioned that the night he passed away, he was about to leave for a mission. Itachi let out a quiet sigh. You have learned more than we ever anticipated. We did not expect you to awaken your Sharingan so soon. He always had faith in others. Naruko's gaze softened. Itachi, please. Tell me what no one else will. Itachi hesitated for a brief moment before speaking. Naruko-kun, I wish I could. But Shisui made me promise not to. What I can tell you is this, he did choose his own fate, but only because he was already gravely injured. He entrusted me with his eyes and a final request. To fulfill it, he made the ultimate sacrifice, allowing me to awaken my Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruko's breath caught in her throat. What was his final wish? Itachi shook his head. That is something only he and I will ever know. His voice, though calm, carried the weight of deep sorrow. I cared for both of you as if you were my own siblings. I am truly sorry for the emptiness you have carried with you. Even in moments of happiness, I could see that pain lingered beneath the surface. Please, try to show some kindness to the third Hokage. Naruko's voice wavered. How am I supposed to do that? Itachi closed his eyes momentarily. I do not have an easy answer for you, Naruko-kun. But despite everything, know that he truly cares for you, as if you were his own grandchild. Naruko swallowed hard. Itachi, where are you? He offered a faint smile. I cannot tell you. And you must not speak of this conversation to anyone. When you return, only 3 seconds will have passed in the real world. I had to step in before something irreversible happened. Sasuke almost reached you, but she hesitated, and so it did not work. That is why I intervened. Naruko lowered her gaze, ashamed. I lost control again. I thought I was stronger than this. Itachi's voice was gentle but firm. You are in pain, Naruko-kun. You seek answers, but you will never have the full picture. What I have told you is all that I can share. There was a brief pause before Itachi spoke again. I have one request for you. Naruko blinked back her emotions. What is it? His gaze softened. Take care of my sister. Tears welled in Naruko's eyes as she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. I promise. I will. Back in the hospital. The group dissolved into feathers, and Naruko clenched her fist, striking the wall beside Hiruzen. She breathed heavily before turning her gaze toward him. After a moment, she exhaled sharply, stepping back and lowering herself onto the bed. No one fully understood what had just transpired. Naruko had been moments away from forcefully uncovering the truth she desperately sought. There were no visible signs of the technique she had been about to use. Even Hiruzen appeared somewhat perplexed, and it became evident that the interruption had been caused by the crow. Though Naruko seemed calmer, the intensity of her emotions was still apparent. Leave. Naruko, Kakashi began, but she cut him off. I said leave. The command rang through the room, making everyone flinch. Reluctantly, they complied, exiting one by one, except for Sasuke, who remained rooted in place. Naru, she called softly. Naruko did not respond. She simply sat there, staring ahead in silence. Sasuke hesitated, uncertain of what to say, but she could tell something significant had happened. Pressing further wouldn't help, so she decided to let it be. Naru, do you want to go home? She gently took Naruko's hand, but there was still no reaction. Sensing that she wouldn't receive an answer, Sasuke chose to act. With a quick movement, she teleported them both to Naruko's house. The moment they arrived, Naruko went straight to her room without a word. Whatever had stopped her earlier had affected her deeply, and Sasuke could only watch as her friend silently retreated. Naruko was never like this. But then again, this was about the only family she had ever known. Sasuke was determined to be there for her, just as Naruko had always been there for her. Without hesitation, she followed her inside, settling beside her on the bed. Without speaking, She wrapped Naruko in a comforting embrace, refusing to let go until sleep finally took her. Naruko lay still, staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. Her life had always been filled with secrets, a never-ending search for the truth that always seemed just out of reach. Every answer led to more questions, more uncertainty. But amidst all the unknowns, there was one thing she now understood with certainty: her feelings for Sasuke. She now realized that what she felt was love. That was the one undeniable truth in her life. No matter what else was uncertain, she could always rely on this feeling. Turning her head, she watched Sasuke sleep beside her. Slowly, Naruko lifted her arms and returned the hug Sasuke had been holding her in. A soft whisper escaped her lips as her eyes finally closed, allowing her to drift into sleep. This isn't home. You are. Dear viewers, I'm dedicated to bringing you the best content possible, and I truly hope you enjoy it. Your feedback means the world to me, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love to have you as part of the community. Hit that subscribe button. Thank you for your support. Anime Dreams.